it, Knicks fans. For the first time in 27 years, the New York Knicks are going to the NBA Finals.
So on today's episode of the mentality of the New York Knicks, we are going to the finals, man. We are going to the finals, man. 1999, I was 14 years old. I was turning 15 in June. We were playing the San Antonio Spurs. Patrick Ewing was hurt, man. We lost the NBA Finals, but we are going back to the finals, man. On today's episode of the mentality of the New York Knicks, man, I want to highlight Jalen Brunson. I want to go over everything about Jalen Brunson since he became a New York Knick 4 years ago. And Patrick Ewing, let me calm down. Calm down, New York mentality. Calm down, brother. Man, Patrick Ewing, man, he will always be my 1990s childhood basketball hero. He will always be my hero, bro. He will always be the number one New York Knick of all time in my heart, bro. Like, I used to have folders when my mom sent me to elementary school of folders and lunchboxes with the faces of like Starks and Oakley and Mason and Ewing, and can't nobody ever take them childhood memories away from me. Patrick Ewing gave 15 years, blood, sweat, and tears to the New York Knicks, and he had his knees on ice since coming out of Georgetown, bro. Like, I'm born in 1985. I never remember a time in my life where I don't have a memory of the New York Knicks. I remember in 1992, at 7 years old, watching the Dream Team, and I wasn't even watching Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Michael Jordan. I was just focused on Patrick Ewing because my imagination as a kid was so big, man. My older brother, is the real MVP of my sports life. I never remember a time where I don't have a love for the Knicks, for the Yankees, for the Jets. It's because my older brother had me watching sports with him since a newborn in the basement. Before I knew the alphabet, before I knew the English language, I loved New York sports. Like, I don't remember a time in my life where I don't love the Knicks, right? And speaking of the alphabet, in today's episode of the mentality of the New York Knicks, I'm going to go A through Z of why Jalen Brunson is the greatest New York Knick of all time. Yes, Patrick Ewing is my all-time great, but when I'm talking about best player and most dominant player that I've ever seen, it's hand down goes to Jalen Brunson. Okay, so example A. Jalen Brunson, since becoming a Knick, he has a winning record, including the playoffs, of 214 wins and only 126 losses. That's a winning percentage of .629. That winning percentage of .629 is on pace for 51.6 wins per 82-game season. B, we've made the playoffs 4 consecutive years since Jalen Brunson. And now we're in the NBA Finals during only year number 4, man. We are going to the finals, man. Example C, we've won 7 playoff series in 4 years since Jalen Brunson's arrival, in comparison to only 4 playoff series wins throughout the 20 years before this kid arrived. We've since eliminated Cleveland, Philadelphia, Detroit, Boston, Atlanta, Philadelphia again, and Cleveland again. Example D. Jalen Brunson is number 2 in New York Knicks franchise history in points per game for both regular season and playoffs combined at 26.8 points regular season and playoffs combined. That is only behind Bernard King's 26.9. So Jalen Brunson is at 26.8 points per game. Bernard King is 26.9. points per game. Jalen Brunson goes out there and has a great first game against OKC and San Antonio in the 2026 NBA Finals, and Jalen Brunson is going to pass Bernard King for the greatest score per game in New York Knicks franchise history. Example E. Jalen Brunson is number 4 in New York Knicks franchise history in assists per game. People have called him a ball hog, and he's number 4 in New York Knicks franchise history in assists per game for both regular season and playoffs combined at 6.8 assists per game. That's only behind Stephon Marbury, 7.0, Michael Ray Richardson, 7.1, Mark Jackson, 7.9 assists per game, leads Knicks franchise history, and he's even ahead of Walt Clyde Frazier at 6.3. Example F. Jalen Brunson is number 1 in New York Knicks franchise history in points and assists per game combined during both the regular season and the playoffs. He's at 33.5 points per game and assists per game. He just broke Bob McAdoo's record of 29.9, which stood since 1979. And he's at 33.5. Shout out to number 33, Patrick Ewing again. Example G, he's the greatest, the most fearless fourth quarter clutch player that we have ever seen, I think, in NBA history. He was last year's 2025 NBA Clutch Player of the Year, And the perfect example was this year in the playoffs, game 1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers of the Eastern Conference Finals. We're down 22 points. We lose that game, we could have, hypothetically speaking, lose the series because it would have just changed the momentum of everything. We're down 22 points with 7 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter against Cleveland Cavaliers in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And then Jalen Brunson happened, ladies and gentlemen. Jalen Brunson went absolutely nuclear with 15 points, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, 7-7 from the field, 1 for 1 from 3. Yo, that is the greatest 7-minute performance of any player in NBA history. You could date back to Walt Clyde Frazier. You could date back to Michael Jordan. You could go to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You go to Shaquille O'Neal. You go to Steph Curry. You go to Hakeem Olajuwon. You can go down the list of NBA greats. Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It don't matter, man. You're never going to find a 7-minute run in NBA playoff history where a player is down 22 points, his team is down 22 points, and that player goes out there and goes 7 for 7 from the field, 1 for 1 from 3, 15 points, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, and makes the biggest and the greatest fourth quarter comeback in NBA playoff history. You are never going to see that, man. Shout out to Rick Brunson. Shout out to his dad for training Jalen Brunson like a machine since Jalen Brunson was a newborn. Bro, Rick Brunson was in New York in 99 when we went to the finals. He has trained his son for pressure. He has trained his son for New York pressure, bro. Jalen Brunson is built for this. Jalen Brunson has the DNA to be able to take New York City on his back and take us to the finals before he wins it all, bro. Shout out to Rick Brunson, man. Jalen Brunson, a high school state champion in the state of Illinois. 2-time NCAA champion coming out of Villanova. Bro, Rick Brunson been with him when he was with Dallas, bro, just watching him and training this kid and coaching this kid, bro. He blew up in Dallas, bro. He became a playoff unstoppable scoring machine with Dallas, man. And then in the Knicks, bro, he's becoming the greatest player in New York Knicks franchise history, bro. Shout out to Rick Brunson for giving this kid that clutch DNA, bro, for just making that kid fearless, bro. Shout out to Rick Brunson again, man. Example H. As a Knick, Jalen Brunson is number 5 all-time in NBA playoff points per game at 29.2 points per game. That's only behind Kevin Durant's 29.3, Allen Iverson's 29.7, Luka Doncic's 30.9, and Michael Jordan's 33.4. Jalen Brunson is even ahead of LeBron James, 28.2. I repeat, Jalen Brunson is at 29.2 points per game in the playoffs as a New York Knick, which is only behind Kevin Durant, Allen Iverson, Luka Doncic, Michael Jordan. And that's the end of the list. Example I. As a Knick, he's 3rd all-time in NBA playoff history in both points and assists combined per game. He's at 35.9 points and assists combined per game. And that's only behind Luka Doncic, 38.62, and Michael Jordan, 39.16. He's even ahead of Allen Iverson's 35.72. So I repeat, when it comes to playoff points and assists combined per game, Jalen Brunson's 3rd all-time at 35.9. And that's only behind Luka, and it's only behind Michael Jordan. Example J, he is 8th all-time in NBA postseason career assist-to-turnover ratio at 2.69 assists per turnover ratio, and that's number 8 all-time amongst all Hall of Fame point guards. That assist-to-turnover ratio, because that's actually the most important statistic of a point guard. It goes way beyond scoring the ball and passing the ball and getting points and dishing out assists. The point guard is the quarterback position, okay? The point guard is the quarterback position. And a quarterback's biggest job is not to throw touchdowns. It's not to throw interceptions. It's not to give the other team great field position and put pressure on your defense. The most important job of a point guard is protecting the rock. And Jalen Brunson is top 8 all-time amongst all Hall of Fame point guards in the playoffs in assist-to-turnover ratio at 2.69. That is only behind Chris Paul's 3.65, John Stockton 3.55, Magic Johnson 3.37, Maurice Cheeks, who's on our coaching staff, 2.89, Jason Kidd 2.80, Steve Nash 2.77, and Gary Payton 2.73. He's even ahead of Isaiah Thomas at 2.67 in assist-to-turnover ratio. That is the most impressive statistic of all of this to me. Example K. He just led the New York Knicks to the greatest fourth quarter team in NBA history. Point differential, regular season, and playoffs combined. We have a fourth quarter point differential heading into the 2026 NBA Finals of plus 278. That plus 278 just passed last year's 2025 Cleveland Cavaliers fourth quarter point differential of plus 259. Historically speaking, we are the greatest fourth quarter basketball team in NBA history. And that's for the simple fact we've got someone like Jalen Brunson who's running the offense and he's running the locker room. We are fearless in the fourth quarter and it's contagious and everybody gets that no fear because of Jalen Brunson. Example L. Jalen Brunson leads the 2026 NBA playoffs this year, number 1 in plus minus. He's at plus 226. He leads the entire playoffs in plus minus at plus 226 this year. Example M. He's currently ranked 3rd all time in single season playoffs plus minus in regards to total here in the 2026 NBA playoffs. He's at plus 226. And that's only behind 2017 Steph Curry, who was at plus 245, and Draymond Green in 2017, which was at 227, plus 227. He just passed 2001 Kobe Bryant, who was at plus 213. So heading into the NBA Finals, Jalen Brunson is at plus 226. He's only 1 plus minus point away from Draymond Green, who was at 227. And then as long as we come out there in the NBA Finals, he's going to pass Steph Curry. He's only 19 points behind Steph Curry, 226. Curry's at 245. He's literally 20 points away from having the biggest plus minus in single NBA postseason history since I think they started keeping track of it in 1998, so 30 years ago, or to be politically correct, 28 years ago. Right? Example N. He's ranked number 1 all time in a single season playoff plus minus per game here in the 2026 NBA playoffs. He has a plus minus per game of plus 16.14 points per game. He just passed 2013 Russell Westbrook, who was at plus 15.0 points per game. And he also passed 2017 Steph Curry, who was at plus 14.41 points per game. And then he passed 2001 Kobe Bryant at plus 13.31 points per game. So to clarify again, Jalen Brunson has the number 1 all-time plus minus per game in NBA playoff history. He's at plus 16.414 points per game. That might not ever be broken. Example O. This dude, Becky Hammon said he wasn't a dude. This dude, he gave New York a hometown discount of over $100 million in order to build an NBA championship contender that we've got today. Jalen Brunson went out there and gave up $100 million because he knows he could get it back in endorsements. He knows he could get it back in advertising. He knows he could be in a movie with Ben Stiller and a film with Spike Lee. He wasn't worried about them $100 million because winning is more important to Jalen Brunson than money is, man. He won a high school state championship. He won two national championships with Villanova. He's about to win a championship with the New York Knicks. Winning and becoming an all-time great NBA player is more important to Jalen Brunson than any amount of dollar amount, any amount of money could ever be to this dude, bro. He is a basketball warrior, bro. And he gave up that money so we can go out there and afford to pay Karl-Anthony Towns and afford to pay OG Anunoby and afford to bring Mikal Bridges over here and afford to just build the most dominant basketball team in NBA history. Example Q. Jalen Brunson has led the 2026 New York Knicks to the number 1 highest NBA playoffs total point differential of all time in NBA playoff history. We have a point differential throughout 14 playoff games of plus 271. This just passed the 2017 Golden State Warriors record that I never thought would be broken. They had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Kevin Durant. And in that 2017 playoff run and championship run, because they won the finals, they had a plus minus of plus 230. San Antonio was number 2. The 2014 San Antonio Spurs were at plus 214. Yo, with Jalen Brunson leading this offense, we have shattered the all-time biggest playoff point differential in NBA history, man. The 2017 Golden State Warriors, once again, they were at plus 230. The 2014 San Antonio Spurs was at plus 214. We've shattered it by over 40 points, by 41 points. We're at plus 271 going into the NBA Finals. And as long as we do our thing against whether it's OKC or whether it's San Antonio, man, we are going to have a plus-minus point differential of over 300. And that might be a record that will never, ever be broken in NBA history because the league has been around for 80 years. They've only kept track of the player plus minus, I believe, since 1988 during Michael Jordan's heyday or the end of Michael Jordan's career. But they've kept these plus minuses for playoff teams forever, for 80 years, right? And it's not just the Warriors of 2017, and it's just not the San Antonio Spurs of 2014, who we've passed in the 2026 NBA most dominant playoff run that the world has ever seen. It was like the 91 Bulls, the 96 Bulls, the 1998 Bulls. It featured the 86 Boston Celtics with Larry Bird. The teams that were in the top 25 of this list were like the 1985 Showtime Magic Johnson-led Lakers. It had the 2001 Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal Lakers. It had the 1971 Milwaukee Bucks. The list goes on and on and on. All the great teams, man. It had the Golden State Warrior teams, the San Antonio Spurs teams, the Chicago Bulls teams. Those were dynasties. And to know that we're number one all time in NBA playoff history with a plus minus of plus 271, I don't think we're ever going to see that broken. Ever. And then my example R is Jalen Brunson has led this 2026 New York Knicks to the number one highest NBA playoffs point differential per game in all-time NBA history. We're at plus 19.35 points per game. We just passed the 1971 Bucks that had a point differential per game in the playoffs of plus 14.50. And then we also passed the 1956, not the Los Angeles Lakers, the 1956 Minneapolis Lakers. They were at plus 18.67, right? So the 1956 Minneapolis Lakers were at plus 18.67. The 1971 Milwaukee Bucks, that record has stood since before the Knicks won our last championship, was at plus 14.50. We have shattered that record. We're at plus 19.35 points per game. I can honestly say, with everything I believe for the love of the game of basketball, that this record of plus 19.35 will never be broken in NBA Finals history. We can even lose a game in the finals by 50 points, which will not happen, I'm just hypothetically speaking, and we still have the number one record. So by the time we finish the NBA Finals, whether we beat OKC, whether we beat San Antonio for the championship, it might not be 19.7 or 19.35 anymore. It might fall down to like 17 points or something like that, unless we really go out and whoop them like we've been whooping Atlanta, Cleveland, as well as the other scrubs that we had to take care of. I can't even remember, man. I'm so excited. Atlanta, Philadelphia, them scrubs, man. Yeah, so that was example R. I can't even get to the next letter, man, because when I was making this tweet for Twitter, man, I ran out of max character limit, and I can't finish the Jalen Brunson alphabet. That's how all-time NBA greatness he is. But there's some examples that I couldn't put in Nick's Twitter that I put here on YouTube when I make this video. Is the Knicks have only won 50 games 3 consecutive years in a row, 2 times before Jalen Brunson. It was done in, I believe, the late 60s, early 70s. They had 3 years in a row of 50-plus wins. And then the Knicks of my era in the early to mid-90s, they had won 4 years in a row of 50 consecutive wins, right? And since Jalen Brunson been here for 4 years, we've had back-to-back-to-back 3 50-plus win consecutive seasons in a row. That to me is incredible. Another example I would give is the Knicks before this back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals run last year under Tom Thibodeau. Shout out to Tom Thibodeau, man, for making all of this possible and just putting us in the situation for Mike Brown to be able to carry the torch. But we only had back-to-back Eastern Conference Final appearances, I think 2 times ever. I know we did it in 98, 99 because we went to the finals. And then I know we did it in 1999, 2000 when we went to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think maybe it was done 1 time before, right? I think in the early 90s. And then we did it for the 3rd time here in 2025 and 2026, man. So hopefully y'all enjoyed it. It was like a 20-minute episode of just going over everything about Jalen Brunson and what he has done for the Knicks franchise, what he has done in NBA playoff history. This dude is going down as a New York legend, bro. As an NBA legend, bro. He's certified Hall of Fame, man.